Oh, I didn't see you there. Welcome to Rant.
The 1 kill! Ben's up for double! Ben's up kill! Double it! Oh, look at the cleanse! Look at the moves! What was that?
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of Rant. I'm your host, Leonyx.
And I'm Moon, and today we're joined by our guest, Travis Gafford. With him, we discuss his career, the current discussion about Spectate Faker and Azubu, and then what he thinks it's going to take for esports to grow as a whole.
We'll start off the show with our very own segment of Icons. Welcome back to the episode of Rant. I am joined by the magnificent Travis Gafford of On Gamers. So, Travis, please take me through the success of a esports journalist from point A to point B.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someday I will become successful and then I can do that. By the way, hi Moon.
Hi, Travis.
Just wanted to say hi to you as well.
How are you?
Very well, very well. Yeah. So I think your question is what has led me to this point in my career,
Yep.
maybe? Okay.
What inspired you to do it in the first place?
Okay. So
That's point A.
Yeah. We'll
Everyone
start.
kind of knows this general broad story of you and Doublelift, but I kind of want to know.
Yeah, like
where
before
you,
that.
Before that.
Yeah.
Before
Oh,
all
okay.
that.
So we're going before.
We're going.
Yeah,
Doublelift.
we're
You know,
like the
out of the
beginning,
womb.
beginning.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Out of the.
Okay. Well, I was born on May 19th, 1989.
Cute.
Apparently 3 weeks premature. I guess.
Wow, you grew up
Yeah.
tall.
Yeah, I know. It's very. Think about how much taller I would have been if I was born on time. No, I don't. Okay, so the question is, again, I'm still kind of confused. Okay, so we're not starting with my career.
It was a
starting
joke.
before that.
Take the joke.
Yeah. Well.
All right.
What
Out
inspired you
of-
to start the career?
Out of college.
Yeah, out of college. Okay, so I graduated from university in Long Beach State, which is the best college
you are a
in the
native
world.
here.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern California. I graduated from Long Beach State with a communication studies major. A lot of people are like, oh, that makes sense that you have this communication studies degree because now you do this. And this was never really the plan. My thought was like, I will just get a communication studies degree because I felt like it was like the business degree for people who didn't want to deal with like this math and business crap, right? Generally and broadly applicable. So in my final semester of university, I applied for a production internship at Riot Games.
What was the drive for that? Was that
Did
only?
you
Oh
play
yeah,
League
I've been playing League for okay, going even further back in high school, I started playing Dota All Stars after getting into Warcraft 3, and I then went off to play WoW and that kind of thing. And then at some point in time, a buddy of mine named Vagar got a
Like
who I'd
literally
been
the
playing.
champion. Like
No, not the champion. This was
Literally
an
that
actual
guy.
individual who was alive.
he wasn't purple and small.
No, he was not. He's a very tall Icelandic man. So
So-
he.
Wow, that's
Opposite.
ironic.
Yes, exactly. Especially
like
the fact he's not purple. But yeah, very tall Icelandic man. And he and I had played Dota All Stars together. And right around the time I was probably like halfway through college at this point, he actually ended up applying for this internship at this company that was making this like Dota clone and
Sounds
called
easy.
Riot Games. And so he got me into the beta of League of Legends, started playing that, and then in the last 2 years or so of my collegiate career, I was playing League of Legends, also playing StarCraft 2, and got really into the esports side of StarCraft 2. And so but I wasn't really following like the League of Legends professional
At that
scene.
time, was it just kind of like was it on the client and was just like all these top players and they're going to be
There
playing, or
really wasn't any.
this third party that was giving you all this information.
Yeah,
on esports?
there really wasn't any content around League of Legends, like the professional scene, other than the fact that there were streams, and then eventually Riot did like season 1 of League, and I watched some of that at DreamHack, but probably was watching even more StarCraft 2 at that DreamHack event. Anyway, wasn't in esports at all, other than just following the StarCraft 2 side, but knew I wanted to get into gaming and really liked League of Legends, really liked Riot Games' company, even if I wasn't super into the esports. So applied for this production internship because I felt like it would be really cool for me to be a producer at a game company, and I'm frequently asked like, hey, what would you be doing if you weren't doing this? And I think I'd probably be trying to be in production in the gaming industry. And so applied for this internship, went through the whole thing. At the end of it, they were like, actually, we're not really looking for an intern. We're looking for like an associate. And I was like, please kill me now. So very bummed about that.
Was it kind of like this hip feel to it as well with Riot? I know like now it's kind of different from back then when Riot was still hiring, and then now to Riot, there's kind of expecting like this I don't know, they have like a certain archetype to them of what they writers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like they are like really cool, laid back kind of thing. Is it kind of the same back then, or they were
I
just
mean, the culture and tone of Riot in the past was, I mean, I've seen that company grow up, right, since before they even had launched the game, so it's been very funny to see them mature and what elements of their culture and the company have stuck around and what others haven't, right? Like, I think they've definitely become a little bit more business savvy. There were a lot more like double IP weekends and stuff like that before, so I do kind of miss the glory days, but they do other cool things, right? Like certainly they weren't renting out World Cup stadiums in Korea for giant tournaments and having Imagine Dragons play. Very different situation,
right? A lot
right?
of growth.
So anyway, applied for the production internship. I did not get that. Was very sad about it, and then afterwards graduated college and applied for a position in their player support because I was looking for a way to get into the company. Felt like that was just sort of like the entryway, right, is to do player support. Felt like I was very qualified for that position, having a communication studies degree and actually having spent 4 years of my collegiate career working in a technical support capacity at the tech help desk at the university. So I was like, I got this. Did not get the job. Much to Riot's loss. You know, it's unfortunate for them.
I bet they regret it every day.
Probably some days they really do, and I'm annoying the heck out of them, and they wish that they had just hired me and had me answer support tickets. But
and this was without any like esports experience, I guess.
Right.
This was just coming out of college.
Is this
I had
before
no
tournaments
plans
and everything like that early in? Or
I was probably interviewing for this position right around the time that they were doing like the season 1 World Championships, which was like June of 2011.
Wow.
And so I had no intent to get into esports, had no plans to do that, enjoyed it, but did not see like a position for myself there. Never saw myself doing interviews or doing a show or anything like that because it was just not what I envisioned myself to be. Never envisioned myself as like a broadcaster or anything. So
and no one was doing it for like at the time either. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's, I mean, I don't know how far along this like path and chart we want to go with my career, but that was, yes, that's true. Like no one was doing it. So eventually
Someone hand you a mic or something? Oh,
Doublelift makes a post on Reddit about the fact that he got kicked out from his parents' place and he was looking for a place to stay. I mean, there's videos out there, so I won't go too far into it, but I reached out to him because he was living about 30 minutes away from me at the time, and that's where he was located, and I had an extra room in my apartment that we weren't looking to fill anytime soon. So I said, hey man, like, and I had been in a position similar to his the summer before my collegiate career, because at the time I was planning on going to college. And so I reached out to him and just said, hey man, if you want to crash here for a little bit, I can help you out or whatever. I did not really know much about this person, so perhaps this was a very dangerous thing for me to do.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask,
what gave you faith?
Was there, knowing that he was a pro player, right?
Yeah.
Was there any actual strategical move there, or was it just out of the good of your heart?
Yeah, no, I certainly did not plan on like capitalizing on like this
you just
opportunity,
knew in the future, right? Like,
no, I
You're
mean,
psychic.
no, literally, like, I didn't have any plans on getting into esports, and so I just saw this person who needed, like, a place to crash for a little bit and who was in a position similar to mine, so I just reached out.
Whoa,
and
you're a nice guy.
people say that. I don't even, like, it was just, like, it just made sense to me, right? Like, oh, look, like, this all makes sense. Like, he needs a place, like, an apartment, whatever. And so he came to live with me, and I helped him get set up because we became really good friends instantly, like, by day 3, it was strange because I remember feeling like it felt like I'd known him for a very long time. We just synced up very well, despite the fact that we're both very different people. And I think about, there was a point maybe like a week or so into his staying with me where he went to UCI for orientation because he'd been planning on going there. And he came back and said that he was probably just going to keep doing the esports thing. And around that time, I don't know if it was in that same conversation or within like a day or so, but very shortly after, I mentioned to him that I was very jealous of the fact that he had these opportunities in esports because I just did not, like I thought, oh, this would be a cool thing, but I could never be a pro player or a caster or any of this stuff. This doesn't make sense. So
you just wanted a part and you didn't know what part.
Yeah, I just didn't see the position for myself in it. And he said, well, you've got this communication studies degree. You should just do interviews with players in the scene which made me think, oh yeah, maybe I could do like a podcast like State of the Game, which was my favorite StarCraft 2 podcast. And yeah, so as much as I'm loath to admit it, Doublelift is the person who gave me the idea to create like this entire career, right?
Wow.
Directly.
So you guys helped each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Like definitely. Wow.
Directly gave me the idea.
That's awesome.
So yeah, no, a lot of people, whenever they hear the story, really I like the fact that theoretically, Doublelift and I, who have both had very great success in the esports scene, specifically in League of Legends, would probably not have had that success if it wasn't for the other person. And so people, that's like, yes, a heartwarming story that unfortunately
It's yours.
is mine. and it overshadows all the terrible interactions that I have with Doublelift every time I encounter him. He's an awful person. So yeah, anyway, that brings me to, I guess, the start of my career. So I don't know where we want to go next.
So State of the League is formed, and that's kind of like your entryway to doing interviews as well? Or
yeah.
How were you picked up by OnGamers eventually? Did you kind of like make your own thing, and then OnGamers was like, oh, I like this, let's put it on?
Sure. So going down the line, right, I started this show, and I had imagined, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's a lot of people can probably identify with the idea of like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a blog, and I'm going to update it. And then by like week 3, you slowly stop updating it, and a month after it's dead, right?
Yes.
You start to do that with like a blog, or you pick up some project or whatever. And so I, in the back of my mind, felt as though this podcast thing that I was going to do just for fun and as a resume builder was something that would happen, right? But I did the first episode, posted it to Reddit, which at the time was tiny, and just got some feedback from people, and immediately was like, could not wait to do the next episode. So 4 days later, did the next episode, and I called the first episode like episode 0, as in like this one doesn't count, pilot episode. And so, yeah, did the next episode, and then I kept really like loving this. Like it felt so good to create this content, and felt like the community was starting to really embrace it, and just could not wait until I could do the next episode. Spent time, you know, like in all my free time, I'd be sitting there thinking about the next one, and slowly, I guess this is kind of cool, right? Like 5 or 6 months after feeling very, very sad about not getting this player support position at Riot, I was MLG, and I had a conversation, and they actually flew me out to Providence, Rhode Island to host one of their first League of Legends events and doing interviews at that event. And so there was this moment where I was on the plane, and I was like, thank God I didn't get that job, because I would have never done this, which I am much more excited to be doing and to be a part of. So it just kind of brought me there. And then about almost a year after that, I had been doing, like MLG Anaheim happened, and I started doing interviews there. Slasher got in contact with me. Actually, I met Slasher first at the MLG Providence event, and he and I started having conversations. I remember thinking, this guy's just like a dick. I hate this guy. And then by June, he was saying, oh yeah, you know, I got picked up by CBS Interactive to do stuff for GameSpot eSports, and I want you to be the lead guy. I'm going to introduce you to people. And I had a conversation with Benito Gonzalez, who formerly was at GameSpot, great guy, and basically started the whole GameSpot eSports thing along with Eric Tay. And he was, again, telling me, like, I want you to be our League of Legends guy, and I was very excited about this. Unfortunately, the process, I guess, of getting me in took a little bit longer, so you can go back and find the very first interview I ever did for GameSpot eSports. I was saying, like, hey guys, I really want to do stuff for you. And they were like, yeah, we're trying to figure out how we can make this happen. And so I did for them, just for fun, a interview for GameSpot eSports at PAX Prime 2012. And it was with Voyboy and Doublelift for their site, and it was just a fun. I wasn't there for fun. I wasn't there. I had flown myself up there, was doing my own coverage of the event, and just agreed to go do this one-off interview for them. And shortly after that, they made sure that I was there. I first covered stuff for them at World Finals for season 2 down at LA Live, and that was my first real coverage with them. And started doing a bunch of stuff for GameSpot eSports, which eventually became OnGamers, and that's where I am now. So there's a bunch of other fun things in there, like when Reddit crowdfunded my trip over to Korea to cover all the stuff that was happening in OGN and all this kind of thing. But very, very, very happy with the last several years of my life, and a lot of that is due to the esports community as a whole, which really embraced my content early on, and I could not be more appreciative of their support of my stuff.
Mm-hmm. A very well-oiled machine from State of the League all the way up to, and that's
it seems that way. It was
yeah.
actually like a very clunky machine where I was constantly replacing stuff.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. Now, would you say that really got that going for on-gamers as well? Are the majority of your Doublelift interviews?
I would not say that. I think, yeah, my Doublelift interviews, or Peter and my interviews, were definitely like a staple of the content that I do, but I wouldn't say that that was in any way responsible for the success of esports content over at CBS Interactive, which, for those that don't know, owns On Gamers and GameSpot. But yeah, I think that the Doublelift interviews, especially the ones that I was doing early on in the start of LCS time, were very popular.
Yeah, at the time, like, weren't those he was probably the biggest and most famous esports player at the time in that season.
I mean, I would argue
era,
that
right?
he probably still is.
Yeah.
He has a really big following internationally and all that stuff. Bjergsen probably up there with him as well, but yeah.
Now, you actually did some research, and you actually talked about in an old episode of Reflections with, or Grilled with Thorin.
With Thorin, yeah.
And you actually comment and say, I wanted to be a interviewer that was both comedic and intellectual and analytical about the game, right? And you say that you want to find the stories in there for each individual player. Besides Doublelift, who have you found, I guess, the most interesting and brought out and like kind of excelled their careers a little bit in the PR platform?
Yeah, I mean, I would never take credit for the success of anyone's career, but
well, no, I'm not the success, but kind of like gave them the extra boost.
Yeah, I'm still cautious to take any credit, right? Like these guys they all stand on their own and they're great. But the people who I have enjoyed their personalities and interviewing, because I've found them to be such compelling people. I mean, a couple examples of those individuals. I really like Prawley. People really enjoy my Prawley interviews. Besides just the Doublelift ones, and I feel like he's a great personality, and I think that my interviews with him hopefully helped bring more attention to him, because I feel like he's a great guy. Benny, I'm very sad that it took people a long time, I think maybe towards the end of his career even, to discover how great of a person Benny is. I don't know, there's a ton of people that, it's very hard to single out anybody. I really, really like Crumbs. Recently left Dignitas and was crashing at my place for a little bit afterwards, and did an interview with him at my apartment. People can go check that out. So yeah, I think that it's very hard for me to name any single person, just because I feel like there is such a great amount of personalities and talent and fantastic stories in the North American LCS specifically. Certainly not as boring as that EU LCS.
Being for Doublelift on screen with you, you guys are best friends, right? Would you consider yourself best friends?
Arch
even
enemies,
to this day?
Forced together through unfortunate circumstances. Yeah, he's definitely one of my closest friends. I have a lot of best friends, right, which kind of dilutes the idea of best friend. But yeah, Doublelift and I are incredibly close.
Do you feel that with that relationship that you guys kind of developed, is why your interviews with Doublelift are kind of that successful?
Oh yeah,
because they're all raw, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, like I think maybe the most popular interview I ever did with him was one where I interviewed him alongside a cosplayer that was cosplaying Officer Caitlin.
Oh, I remember this one. Yeah. It's so funny.
And so I think that I would not have been able to create such a unique situation for him in that interview had I not known him very well personally.
Can you please shed some light on that? Like, what happened afterwards?
Did it work? That's all. Did it work?
Did it work? Yes or no?
Who was it for,
I'm sure that when you have Doublelift on the show, you can ask him all these questions, and I have no doubt he'd be more than willing to answer personal questions about his life.
Do you guys still spend a lot of time together even though you don't live together anymore?
Yeah, I mean, it comes in spurts because both of us are so busy, right? Like, all pro players, I don't know how much the community understands how busy these guys are, especially during LCS and that kind of thing, but especially during Worlds when he came out to Korea, we spent a ton of time together, which was really great because, again, like, just hard to get in touch sometimes, but hung out with him just a couple weeks ago, and I see him at the studio, and we'll talk randomly and interact on Twitter in varying ways.
Okay, so you have said that you've watched StarCraft and kind of followed the esports scene all throughout your career. League of Legends, what's your thoughts on the longevity of it? StarCraft Brood War was like a long cycle of esports. How do you stay fresh in League of Legends, and would you ever like follow another game if given the opportunity to do so?
Sure. I think League has a very bright future ahead of it. There were some, I don't want to say questions, but there was certainly some conversation about whether or not League had peaked towards the end of last year, especially once Worlds numbers came out, and I felt as though, even just looking at my content, like still very successful and I was very proud of it and the attention that it was getting, but I didn't feel as though we were still growing in the crazy way that we had before. That being said, I feel as though looking at just the first 2 months, we're not even 2 months into this year, and I again feel like things are on the rise. We're starting to see
the increase on the graph, right?
Yeah. Like
is it gradual, or how do you?
I mean, I don't know. It's probably hard to say without looking at like it depends obviously on like the metric that you're using, right? Like, is it just Twitch viewership? Is it engagement with pro players and social media? I don't know, but I do feel as though over time, or especially within the past 2 months, we're starting to see it pick up still. So I think that we're still only seeing more growth, and it'll be a while before we see things peaking out, and then I think that we'll be due for, like a stable following for some time afterwards. Riot in the past has made some very bold claims about them wanting to have League just stretch out into the future for a very, very, very long time and sort of become like a baseball thing. I have no idea if that's going to be the case. I mean, certainly they're probably more than anyone the ones that are in control of making sure that that happens, right? But I feel like it has a very good future. I myself have certainly been wondering a lot, because I look at 2014 and I look at where I was at the end of 2014 and the beginning of 2014, and while I certainly feel like I've had a lot of success career-wise and otherwise in that year, I wonder if the content that I'm creating right now is still the best way that I can impact esports, League of Legends esports especially, and if there aren't other pathways out there for me. I remember in the past people asked me like, where do you see yourself, right, in 10 years? And I think in the past it was a very easy answer for me of saying like content creation and journalism. I'd love to do this forever, but as the industry shifts and as content moves in other places and teams start creating a lot of their own stuff and all that kind of thing, I wonder where I will be 5 years from now. So maybe on the business side, maybe still doing content, but there's certainly a lot of questions about where I'm headed in my mind, and we'll only be able to tell as time continues.
I'm going to throw out a hypothetical. If just League somehow just goes the 90 drop, right? What game or where do you go to next?
Sure,
what is the shift?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on where I go, right? So, or what I want to do. So, if League dropped away tomorrow and I was like, I still want to create content, then the areas that really interest me are Hearthstone. I love Hearthstone. I play it a ton, and I feel like it's a very underserved and underdeveloped community right now. So I think that would be really fun to enter that scene and sort of see what I could do. And then there's certainly other areas that I think could benefit from more content creation. CSGO has seen a phenomenal rise in activity and engagement and viewership in the past year even. At 2014, I don't think a lot of people could have predicted that. And so I think that would be kind of fun for me to explore. CSGO, I've played Counter-Strike a lot as I grew up, but nothing that I've been as passionate about. So I probably would want to start playing that game and make sure that I'm interested in it. If I didn't want to do content, I think I would probably go into the business side and approach it more holistically. I think that now more than ever you are seeing great sponsors, besides the wonderful HyperX, whose studios we are in right now, but even non-endemic sponsors such as HTC want to enter the scene and not really know how to approach sponsorship in the industry and how to do this kind of thing. And on the opposite side, you have teams and organizations who I think don't entirely know how to cater towards these sponsors, sometimes even the endemic sponsors, right? And you see people like Davis Vague, who just recently purchased the Curse Academy team and became Gravity, and wonderful guy. And he's obviously new to the scene, and there's a lot of people like him that are entering and don't have the connections and that kind of thing. So I could see myself being part of, working with sponsors who want to come in, or working with an organization or whatever who are trying to entice sponsors coming in. And then part of the appeal for me in working in either one of those roles is the fact that, like, I really, really legitimately love esports, love the community, and want to grow and provide new opportunities for everyone in this. And so I think that I could potentially do something like that there.
Yeah, speaking of that infrastructure that you are talking about, in that peak that you were talking about earlier, what do you think, in your own mind, would improve the growth of esports? You talk about, League could quite possibly peak this year, or what would be the next step for esports to maybe jump into the right direction, or growing to traditional sports, let's say that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different opportunities there. Money is perhaps one of the, in a very callous way, the most, and this is again why I think it's really important to be enticing all sorts of new sponsors in. Money makes really big things happen, right? Like, you can create an awesome show with money, which becomes even more enticing to fans and that kind of thing. I could give you the very pure answer of, like everyone working together, and ultimately that is part of a point of it, but I do think that financial investment from new sources is fantastic, and that doesn't necessarily even have to come from sponsors, right? Like, you have developers out there who are trying to figure out how to make their game a more compelling esport, and you have developers out there who suddenly their game is becoming an esport, and they didn't really anticipate that, and so they're trying to figure out how to finance it and really grow that, because there's a lot of value there.
So is it other developers, other games to
So again,
live and prosper more than
tons of different ways, right? So I think that League of Legends benefits when CSGO is doing very well. So if Valve is doing more for the scene, ESL is announcing all sorts of really big tournaments recently and putting really big financial investment into that. I think that is really exciting to see. Riot continues to develop and grow their stuff with things like PTL, which I'm surprising. I did not have high expectations for that show, but I feel like it's getting better and better every week, and that they are really dedicated to it. And so I think that these kind of committing to the industry and the scene financially and with resources is one of just the biggest ways that I think any big organization can grow the scene. And then internally, right, and again, this kind of goes back to that two-way street. I think that as the existing folks that are like ourselves that are in the industry think hey, how can we create better experiences for fans, and how can we take the new resources that are coming in and create a better experience and a better product for all the fans that are out there. If people want to see content from using content as an example, if people want to see these pro players, these behind the scenes moments, the show that Team Liquid recently did, my buddy Damien, they're able to do that from support from HCC, and Team Liquid fans, and not just Team Liquid fans, but League of Legends esports fans are loving the show, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these opportunities out there to create even better experiences and better products for the fans, and that's fantastic. Not to use a pun, but it's a great opportunity there, and I think it's so cool that players and fans of the esport now are getting even more access to players and all this stuff through the resources that are coming in.
How do you feel about the content that's for the more casual side of gamers? Not only do you have you who does the in-depth players and the specific things going on, but then you have shows like All Chat that Riot is producing that has all of these more casual sides of the game. Do you think that helps grow?
Yeah. I mean, that goes into, and not to go down the rabbit hole too much, but that goes into a larger discussion about the fact that esports. So All Chat, I think definitely is an example, because All Chat doesn't cater to the esports audience. All Chat caters to the general League of Legends audience, right? But if you're getting those people more engaged in League of Legends, they're more likely to check out the esports side. And so you're, you know, like, yeah, I definitely agree with the idea that, like, by expanding the gaming community in general towards these sort of esports and competitive titles, that you're pulling more people into the esports side of things, and that they can see like how awesome these tournaments are and really enjoy it, right?
It's like a gateway.
We just need this like Chinese billionaire to come in and just funnel like
I mean,
it'd be like 5 all chats and then like 6
that certainly happens. Yeah, that certainly happens.
You actually do a very interesting piece recently with the Spectate Faker and Azubu. Care to share some updates? I know that people can go out there and find out what it's been in League news recently. Yeah. But any updates on what's been going on in that world? Has Azubu given you an answer? Or
No, I haven't had any formal discussions with Azubu at all. It's interesting. I feel as though I don't even know how to approach that topic anymore, because initially my video was just like, hey, Azubu issued this DMCA. It's kind of concerning that they did because they didn't have any right to, and it feels as though no one really cares about it. And this is concerning as a content creator, and I think fans should be concerned about it because they had no right to do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then suddenly this whole thing, like the whole conversation has completely and utterly changed away from this discussion that I wanted to start around Azubu's right to do this, and perhaps like we just, like and again, I was never making any comment about whether or not Spectate Faker should be allowed to do what he was doing, only that there needed to be a better process and handling of this from what was, in my opinion, like a broken situation.
Yeah. And the conversation has changed a lot since then.
And now Mark Merrill came in and said a bunch of crazy stuff, and it's now become like the Mark versus Spectate Faker.
I just feel like there's so many gray areas in this like conversation and debate about what's going on, because there's the Spectate Faker, it's not exactly the client, it's not, you don't get the enjoyment of his webcam, you don't get the enjoyment of like his clicks and all his ridiculousness,
no doubt. So like I watched Spectate Faker stream against Faker the other day for about 30 or 45 minutes just as a experiment, and I cannot understand a situation where anyone would be like, oh, I don't want to watch Faker, I'd rather watch Spectate Faker.
Do they not know?
Like the game ends and then it just sits there at like the defeat screen for like 10 minutes while like Faker's doing other stuff and playing random games and that kind of thing. Like,
which you can watch on Azubu.
Right. So there are so many elements to this, and only because of the fact that I feel like there's already so much conversation about it, I haven't done like another hour-long video, but my gosh, like I really don't think that, first off, I really don't think Spectate Faker is a threat to Faker or Azubu or anything like that. Like, Azubu and Faker are still creating a better product at the end of the day than Spectate Faker. I think that Riot should probably be less concerned. If they're concerned about Faker, they should be about how much money he's making. They should probably do an initial investigation into how much money he gets from the Azubu Kespa deal in the first place, because I don't think that information is really there, and I doubt that Riot has looked too far into it. So like before you're even having a discussion about whether or not Spectate Faker is taking money away from Faker, you need to have a discussion about how much Faker's even getting in the first place. Like, it's such a, like, so many elements of this. And in a way, it's really great that, like, this thing has happened, because it has started all these lines of discussion that were not really there previously, and really opened up a lot of opportunities to think about these things in a general way that I think weren't there before.
Yeah.
But in another way, it's just become a complete clusterfuck. And I don't know if I can say that word on the show, but hopefully the audio person over there
we can bleep it out later. We won't bleep it out. Okay, so
but we won't.
without, let's say, without you being the journalistic person you are, what if you, I'm just gonna throw this out there, what if you didn't cover that story? Do you think it would have just been another thing that blew right over?
Yeah, I mean,
Did you spark it?
Like, do you like
are you
that's kind of another question in itself as well. I would have to say you're a pretty big voice in the community. Putting out content. Do you ever have to like kind of hold yourself back in terms of content? It's just like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should. If I express my opinions here, it might it might give an unbiased opinion for the public, or?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, did I start all this? I made the video, and I especially titled it like why everyone should be concerned about this, because I felt like it had happened, and I did an article about it, and then a week later, nothing had developed on it, at least on the public side. I hadn't heard any development on it behind the scenes, and so I really did feel as though it was important for people to be aware of what had happened and why it seemed to be such a big deal. And I stand by the fact that it is a big deal, because if you look at everything that's happened since I did the video,
it's a big deal.
Yeah, it seems to have sparked a lot of discussion, as we were just saying. I mean, I don't know if I want to take credit for the fact that this has happened, especially because it's such a messy situation. But yeah, I'm very happy that I did the video and stand by it. In regards to the effects of doing this stuff, it is very hard right now for a neutral esports journalist, which is arguably what I am, since I'm not paid by I'm not paid by Riot or a league or a team or anything like that. I think it is really hard right now for a journalist like myself to always put out all the stories that they want to, unless you kind of just go like the Richard Lewis route, where he doesn't have access to teams or the LCS or a lot of different things, because he has decided that he would rather do this other stuff. And I respect him for that, because it's something I don't feel like I can do without dramatically changing all of my content. In traditional sports, you have folks in traditional sports, the press are far more in a position of power in relation to teams and organizations and companies than they are in esports. And that's not to say that they have more power, right? But there's a better balance of power. So it's very hard, for instance, in traditional sports, for instance, it would be very hard for a TSM, the leading team in a scene, to completely blacklist one of the arguably largest media organizations and feel very little repercussion, right?
Did that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Like,
and there would, if one of the big teams like blacklisted ESPN, there'd be obviously huge repercussions for them, right? Whereas there weren't really any for TSM, and I'm not crying about that, right? It's just kind of the place that we are. So yeah, it's really hard. There's always a thought process before any kind of story goes up or any kind of news goes up, or I decide to say anything about like what will the long-term repercussions be of this. And I've taken a chance by starting this discussion about the Azubu thing, and certainly I feel like I don't feel as though I feel like I was only calling attention to something that they did, and so in my mind it should just be like, okay, well, if there were repercussions for what you guys did, Azubu, like you did that, like it's not like I've gone out and tried to like start a mob against you. I felt like my video was very balanced, but only time will tell if that ends up impacting me in any way, shape, or form. And I have a lot of friends over at Azubu. I think that I don't have like a lot of animosity towards that company. I think that they do some really good stuff, and so hopefully there's no repercussions. But yeah, there's always a chance that they could feel frustrated at me for producing that video and then try to take some sort of action. I don't know what it would be, but we'll see.
Has there ever been a time like that where a similar time for the Azubu thing that you had to withhold a story or withhold a piece of information that just like, oh, it could be really good, it could advance my career even further maybe, but it was just kind of like, I'm doing this, I can't, this is a friend, this is immoral, or has there ever been an instance where that is?
No, I not in that way. There's certain, I guess there's, the better example would be that there's been times where I was aware of something that I wish I could publish, but because of the way in which I got the information, I couldn't publish it, right? Because you need sources to tell you, yes, like, we're okay with this before you can publish it, right? You can't just find out information from people who say, don't use this information and use it ethically, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm certainly aware.
One is Wade, you know?
I'm certainly aware there has certainly been times in the past where I've been aware of information that I did not publish only because it would be ethically wrong for me to do that. And
interesting. And
Richard Lewis, that situation does probably show up more for me than others just because of how close I am with people. Now the trade-off there is that the proximity that I have to people has probably also enabled me to create a lot of content I couldn't create otherwise, right? And that's why I think it's really important that you have this really great spread of third-party media. I think that right now it's very sad. We don't have as many independent third-party media as I feel like we should. There's a lot of different reasons for that, but I wish that there were more, because I think it's important that you have people like myself who are more embedded in the scene and with the teams and all that kind of stuff than others, and then you have people, like, it's very strange. The community seems to think that there's only this one type of journalism, right? That, like, you're a journalist, how dare you not break all these stories and be an investigative journalist, right? When in reality, like, if you look at traditional sports, you look at a lot of different industries, there's a ton of different journalists types. Like, you've got people that do this very investigative stuff, you've got the people that just do, like, profiles on people, you've got the people that, like Thorin, who do historical and retrospective pieces and all this kind of stuff. And so I think I would personally like to see more of that. And again, very happy that other people exist out there, other individuals that can do the stuff like The Score, eSports Heaven, Gold Pretend, Daily Dot. Like, it's really good to see a lot of these guys. Yeah, eSports Express, etc. Yeah.
So you've basically chosen the route of trying to put up the content that you feel the community should be aware of while not trying to exhaust your connections. But there have been times where you've posted questionably controversial things or things that people didn't really want to be out there.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's made a strong impact on the content you've been able to produce since then? Like, do you regret anything?
Yeah, I don't think I really have any regrets on any of the content that I've produced, other than sometimes I'm like, oh, that interview was embarrassing or something like that, right? Like, I don't think there's ever been a time where it's like, oh, I put something out there and the repercussions were so big that I really wish I had not.
That's good.
Certainly ways that where I feel like things could have been approached in a better way. And I think that's natural, though, as the scene grows and matures, that everybody sort of figures out, like, especially back season 2, season 3, in my opinion, the article that OnGamers posted, my colleagues, Slasher and others posted regarding the Twitch streaming contracts, or sorry, the streaming contracts that Riot or the streaming aspect of the LCS player contracts that Riot was trying to put into place. I think that really changed the game a lot in terms of how how the industry viewed journalists on the League of Legends side. Certainly, I feel as though, in a strange way, that publishing of that article actually strengthened the connection between Riot and esports journalists, in the sense that in the past, you know, like, I think that they had somewhat deprioritized making sure that there was a strong connection and relationship between people, journalists, and that kind of thing. Because there was a better way for that story to have come out, in my opinion. It came out, and Riot was very unprepared, and the article could have been more informative, and it just, in my opinion, could have been done better. And so I think that when stuff like that has come out in the past, it has done a better job of raising everyone's eyes to, like, oh, like, we're here now. Like, we're not just like a bunch of random people with CRT monitors at like at a LAN event, right? Like, this is real, and there are big repercussions for this kind of thing. And so I'm very happy that the scene is developing in that way.
Speaking of, like, all your interviews and the content that you're putting out there, do you have, like, this certain hatred towards Vortic when he comments on everyone's interviews? I kind of do.
Vortic, yeah.
Oh, this is the YouTube guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a Reddit guy, right? Is he from Reddit or whatever?
YouTube commenter,
YouTube comments.
Oh, okay.
He's always at the top of the comments.
Yeah, I know he's a commenter.
Do you ever read them? I mean, I'm sure you've read many of your comments.
I just tend to, I stopped caring about YouTube comments that much. YouTube comments are, I don't really like their comment system, I think, and so it bubbles up a lot of, like, silly stuff. And
okay, so where do you get most of your feedback from, I guess? Like, is it just the Reddit posts?
Twitter, Reddit, friends. There's a lot of people that I value very highly, so close friends that provide great feedback on, and I will actively solicit feedback from them on this stuff. And so I think probably them more than anyone are the folks that I get the best.
Yeah, like how do you?
Trust,
that's what I want to know. Like, how do you better yourself as a journalist? Do you kind of just scroll through and see?
So here's an example. At the start of this year, I went and covered the Smite World Championships with Damien Estrada, who does again the Team Liquid show, and it works with them. And over the course of that event, he consistently made fun of my very generic intro, which for previous years of the LCS, which was like, "Hey everyone, Travis here on day 2, week 7 of the NALCS. I'm joined by Doublelift," and he would just say that over and over and over again, right? And so maybe not like the most like formal way of giving me feedback, but it did a very good job of making me just hate the fact that I had stagnated the intro to my interviews, and while in the past I had viewed that as like a trademark, I started to view it as like, okay, that's just an example of ways in which I have not continued to evolve my content style. So people might have noticed that since the start of this year's LCS, I try to, and sometimes it's very hard, but I try to create much more of a unique intro to the interview by telling like what the storyline is up to that point, right? Like, in the past several weeks, Cloud9 has been struggling, but they did just come off of a very important victory against CLG. I'm now joined by Hi to discuss that. Hi, you know, like that's a little bit better than like, hey everyone. And then we moved, on the production, we moved like we now have a little thing, because I do think it's important to tell when the interview was taking place, like what week or whatever, so now we just have it on all the things. So very boring way of saying like an example of where like the feedback has helped me, but that is also a trade secret, and so if you try to steal that for your interviews, I will kill you.
They're stolen and already beep boop, already processed. All right, Travis, that sums up our interview with you. Thank you for being on the show. Shoutouts, plugins. How can we find you on the interwebs?
Plugins?
Plugins.
Yeah. There's a great amount of plugins for a variety of software that I use. I'd love to talk about those now. No, plugs. Yeah, so first off, thank you so much to CBS Interactive. I would not, just as much maybe as Doublelift, I would not be where I am today without the fantastic support. I don't know what that F was going to be. It was the fucking awesome support or something like that they have given me over at GameSpot and on Gamers. All my content gets cross-posted right now to both of those. And so I'll be over, in fact, in the future, besides LCS, I'll be up at GDC and over at IEM Katowice, which is world exclusive. You guys get the announcement that I'll be at IEM Katowice. But yeah, so thanks to them, you can follow all my content over there. And then also I have a Twitter, which is SOTL Travis.
You should change that. You don't even do State of the League anymore.
Shut up, Rob.
What the hell?
So I have less than 1,000 people away from 100K followers. So
I saw that today.
Super hype.
Maybe this. No.
Probably not. But yeah, that's where people. So thank you for having me.
You'll get 7 followers one of them being probably my mom, that watches this stuff. Anyways.
Thank you for having me, Rob.
Thank you, Travis.
We look forward to seeing what you come up with in the future. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I'm Moon.
I'm Leonyx. Thank you to HyperX for providing this great in studio. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube, SK Gaming. Do whatever you need to do. Other than that, till next time, guys.
Peace out.